crazy.
Yeah, it's not gonna
Yeah. You want to stand over here so you can.
Yeah.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. How are we doing today?
be.
A little bit tired, a little bit ready to go, right? Well, today, my name's Eddie Tapia.
I'm Alyssa Toll.
We're going to talk to you guys a little bit about negotiation. We really wanted to make this a class discussion where we can all kind of talk about what we know about negotiations, some negotiations we've been in, and so forth. So I know we're getting pressed on time, but if you guys can share your stories and stuff, it'll make it go a little bit faster. So first, what is negotiation? Tell me your layman's terms of what you guys think or what you know negotiation is.
Sell me this bottle.
That's kind of part of it. Nick?
Two parties litigating a matter that they both feel differently on.
Okay. Anyone else?
Yeah, it's about like the number of parties trying to reach an agreement on something that they currently do not have.
Yeah, exactly that. Give my accent. That's pretty much the definition. It's a process by which two or more parties with conflicting interests determine how to allocate resources and or work together. Notice how it says parties though. A lot of times in negotiations people think it's one-on-one or it's just like two parties. It could actually be multiple, 3, 4, 5, a lot of different parties coming together to negotiate and work through a problem. But Patch kind of talked about this earlier. If there's no conflict, you can't really negotiate anything. There's always got to be some aspect of a conflict, and sometimes people think that all negotiations about solving conflicts, but it can also be about adding value, which I'm going to talk about in a second here. So first I want to go over some important terms that you guys need to know. These are claiming value, target point, and resistance point. Now, in any negotiation that you have to have an aspect of claiming value. There's some aspect of I value this car at this, I need to claim as much value, or I really want to go to Cheesecake Factory, but my girlfriend wants to go to sushi, so I gotta put value on something, right? There's always an aspect of claiming value in a negotiation. Next is your target point. So the target point is the goal that you're trying to hit. If you're negotiating for like a salary, your target point might be a range of 80 to 110,000 or whatever. And that's what you're trying to shoot for. Anything in that range is your target point. Your resistant point, that's your bottom dollar. That's your break point, your hard stop. That's saying, I can't do this for anything less. I can't do it. So it's really important to understanding these terms because they help you be a better negotiator. Next slide. Now I want to talk to you guys a little bit about distributive versus integrative negotiation. You can hit that slide again. So most people think negotiation is all distributive negotiation. Distributive is focused on the outcomes and it's really focused on winning, right? You're trying to get the biggest piece of the pie. Think about distributive negotiation as Facebook Marketplace, OfferUp, stuff like that, eBay. Has anyone bought stuff on there?
Yes.
Yeah, everyone's been there, right? You go and you try to get the best deal possible. As you're trying to buy something as a buyer, you're trying to pay the least amount of money for it. That's you claiming the value. If you're trying to buy something for 1,000, you're trying to get it for as low as a price. As a seller, they're trying to get as much money as possible. So there's this give and take where we're just trying to be distributive and who's going to win this negotiation, who gets a better deal. But not all negotiations need to be like that. That's a very narrow-minded way of thinking. I want you guys to also think about integrative negotiation, which is a collaborative effort. That's more finding beneficial solutions for everybody so that we can all come together and make something out of it. Think about integrative negotiation kind of like, you know what, I'll give you a scenario. Imagine you guys are a restaurant chef, right? Your dream is to open up your own restaurant and you're a chef, you love to cook. So you go out and you find a business owner or an investor and they want to invest in you, right? You guys might be negotiating over the price of equipment, you guys might be negotiating over the splits of revenue, stuff like that. And you can make that very distributive. Well, I'm doing the cooking, so I need 60%. Well, I'm doing the marketing, so I need 60%. And you go back and forth, and you guys just start trying to claim too much value. Well, you can go through that negotiation integratively. And you can say, well, how can we put our tools together so that we can make this business successful and we could all make money? And how can we divide these splits in a way that it's good for you, but it's good for me? Instead of just trying to claim value and negotiate against yourself, this is what integrative negotiation is. Another aspect is airlines. Everyone knows like Delta, American, United, they're all in those big groups of airlines, right? Why do they do that? It's better for them to group up with other airlines and create value for their customers than it is to compete against all those other airlines individually. So they get in as a group, they create value for the customers, and then they can compete against other groups, right? It's all about adding value and working together. Next, I want you to understand what's important. These are 3 things. I call it PPI. So you want to focus on planning, position, and importance. Now, at the top of this, planning is the most important thing that you can do in negotiation. The people that plan the best and plan earliest generally have more success. Next is your position in your negotiation, right? Has anyone ever gone into a negotiation and you kind of are thinking like, okay, well, how much leverage does the other person have on me? Well, what are my tools that I could use? This is the position, right? Understanding where you're at on the chessboard and what are your paths to victory. Last is importance. This kind of goes with claiming value. You have to understand what's important to you and also what's important to the other person to figure out how you're going to attack this problem and how you're going to negotiate. Now we're going to click on this video.
I'll let you in on something.
Can you hear?
You'll never win an argument with your spouse. I used to teach a negotiation class at a law school. I called it the drop of the lemon. You know, so you got 2 people, and they both want the
Get ready to
lemon.
pause.
There's only one lemon. And so, what's the best way to solve that problem? Give one of them an orange.
Pause it.
No.
So, the problem with the lemon. I'm just going to do it without the video. It'll be easier. Let's say we have a lemon. 2 people want the lemon. How do we solve the problem?
Why don't you break them up and let them do it? We have time.
We have time?
Yeah.
Well, no, it's better. We can do it like this.
You're
So you
fine.
said cutting in half, right? How else would you guys solve the problem?
I would keep the lemon for myself.
Keep the lemon for yourself. It's not yours to give. They
Find another lemon.
find another lemon. No, there's only one.
Does it have to stay in the form of a lemon?
Yeah, it's a lemon.
And make lemonade.
What?
Flip a coin.
Flip a coin. Keep going. Just spitball. And there's no wrong answers. This is how you go through a negotiation.
Throw it in the trash.
Me and Alyssa want the lemon.
No one else gets
No one gets the lemon.
No one gets a lemon.
Split it in half, right?
Why do you want the lemon?
There it is. Boom. That's what we're looking for. It's why do we want the lemon? I want the lemon so I could use the juice to make lemonade. She wants the rind to bake it. We could both have 100% of what we want if we just ask the other person, why do you want the lemon? You can't always do this in negotiation and reach over to the other side, right? But you guys said cut it in half. That's what everyone directly goes to. If we cut the lemon in half, I get 50% of what I want, she gets 50% of what I want. Think about it, guys. You guys just went to which type of those negotiations I just explained? Distributive, right? How do I get the most value? How do I get the bigger piece of the lemon? How do they get the bigger piece of the lemon? But instead, if we had that more integrative mind, we could both get exactly what we want. You can't always do that in negotiations and be like, hey, what do you want? Yeah.
So does like the negotiation type, distributive or integrative, depends on what type of negotiation you have. Like let's say you're in a divorce settlement,
Right.
you're going to be distributive compared to if you're in something that's collaborative, you would be more integrative.
Are you going to be completely distributive?
If I don't like the person I'm divorcing, hell yeah.
That's what I'm saying. The process, the things. You guys can actually come together and figure out something that works for both of you, right?
No,
There's other
well, I'm just
variables.
curious if like
Why
certain
does,
situations
I have a
dictate.
question. Why does it matter whether or not you like this person or not?
Well,
All
because
negotiations are conflict.
Mhm.
So if you can disassociate yourself with, I hate this person or whatever, that's one thing. And it certainly, there's an emotional
well, I was
component
gonna say
associated with
it's
it.
hard to rip emotions out from everything that you negotiate in life. Like it's easy to like from a practical standpoint, like hypothetically speaking, you cannot have any emotion towards somebody in negotiations, but like even in sports negotiations, like sometimes people take less money to play for a team that they
love.
Yeah.
so it's
But
hard
that's
to
a
rip
value
emotion out.
proposition. So there's always emotion in everything that you do, no matter what. And this goes completely off topic
That's good.
in some extent, but this is emotional intelligence. How well do you know yourself? How do you know the people that are working with you for you or that are on the other side of the table? And so step one is understanding your own point of view or your where your own situation is. And so there's always going to be emotions. You're excited, or you feel like something's going to get pulled off. You're nervous, or you're unprepared, or I don't know any of these things. But it almost goes to this notion of you can't control your emotions. Those are just autonomic. It happens. What you can control is how you react and either use or disassociate yourself from those emotions. And that's where negotiations, for example, takes practice. So you can recognize what's happening. If you have a high level of emotional intelligence or this EQ, then you can realize what's happening and then be able to use that to your benefit, especially if you can see the other person struggling with that. my wife hates it when I negotiate because I can see what's happening, and she starts laughing. And she's a lawyer too, and so the negotiation is very powerful if you understand. You bring up this important thing. That's why I couldn't help but interject. Emotions will come in. Your job is to recognize all this other stuff that you're doing a very good job of talking about, to be able to surpass that.
I want to touch on one thing you said real quick.
Yeah.
Negotiation's a skill. Any skills can be learned and refined in practice, so keep that in mind. Well, you bring up a good point, right? Like what happens if it's a divorce where it's a very distributive by nature? Some of them are going to be distributive, which is I'm going to go on the next slide and talk to you about it. Sometimes they're going to be distributive natures where you just can't do it, like a Facebook Marketplace. That's just distributive by nature. But a good negotiator can find the problem and switch up the style to add value. So it's just something to think
So
about.
there's no better one, like integrated registry, like
No.
I
It's,
recommend whatever
it's whatever's going to solve that problem the best way. If it's sometimes, hey, you don't want your ex-wife to get half your stuff, you might have to be real distributive, right? But maybe you got a kid with the lady, and it's actually better to add value to help the kid out, stuff like that. Scenario based. Real quick, I'm going to go through these. These are hardball tactics to really use in negotiation, mostly for distributed negotiation. Has anyone used a high ball or low ball? Tell me about it real quick. Buying something on Facebook.
Anytime you go to anytime you travel overseas and you're gonna have to low ball people who look at you as American and they highball you.
Yeah.
Well, as a seller, excuse me, on Facebook Market, I always say, okay, I want to sell this chair. I'll take 50, but I'll mark it at 70, so that way I have some room.
Right, exactly. You're pricing it high to counter for those low balls. Were you gonna say something, Tyler?
Oh yeah, I had a class where it was entrepreneurship class, like the intro to it, and I was selling like chargers and stuff, and I would price it like, all right, $20 for the portable charger, but I tried a tactic where I was like, all right, just name a price, and like most of the time the price that they said was fair enough that I'm like, deal, take it.
Then you just take
But,
it. Yeah. You're letting them bid against themselves essentially. That's another good tactic. So, and we know highball, making those extreme high or low offers. The one caveat to highball, lowball is sometimes it could come off as super disrespectful to the person and kill the deal before it starts. So sometimes you got to be careful with that. Next is bluffing, seeing who could back down first. I got a story about this. Every time I go away, I always try to buy like a magnet or something like that. So I'm always negotiating with these shop owners, and they're like, "Oh, the magnet's gonna be $15," and I'm like, "No, I can give you $5." And they're like, "Absolutely, like, come on, like that's way too low." And I go, "Okay, I'm gonna walk away." And that bluff of me walking away usually gets the price going, and I'll able to get it for my price. So you got to be careful with that because sometimes they'll call your bluff. Deception, pretty self-explanatory. Just misleading them. Intimidation. This happens to a lot of females a lot of times. You go to kind of like the car repair places, and they're like, "You need more blinker fluid. If you don't put more blinker fluid, your car's gonna blow up," and they get really scared and they buy it. Right? Bogey, throwing in something random. And nibble, asking for extra items. Maybe you're negotiating a car sale and you're like, "Oh, throw in some extra floor mats," stuff like that. My personal favorite is the blizzard. This is when you overwhelm the person with information. So you just prep and prepare and just cover them with information. Like, your company's not valued at this, your projections are low, X, Y, Z. And then last is good cop, bad cop, which we're pretty comfortable with. Now I know I want to get to Alyssa's part. So now she's going to take over and talk to you guys a little bit about Chris Voss and the FBI negotiator.
Oh, dude, I love that guy.
Yay, I'm
Oh my
excited
God.
then. Thank you, Eddie, that was amazing. So I'm just kind of moving on to like a different type of negotiation. You know who Chris Voss is?
Yeah.
Have you read his book?
No.
No, but you.
Yeah, I bought one of the books, or I bought another like CIA guy's book
Yeah.
that was very similar.
Yeah, no, so this guy is so cool. Like, I read this book, but he's a former FBI hostage negotiator, and he literally has 24 years of experience. He like talks with terrorists, kidnappers, and all these like high stakeholders. Like, it's a crazy, just his experience is so cool. And the best thing about the book is it takes like him literally negotiating like whether someone lives or dies into how we can be like better business partners and girlfriends, boyfriends. Just such a cool perspective on, yeah, you trust this guy. There's just something about him, like he has things to say. So I thought this would be a great way to just see his perspective. He also is the founder of the Black Swan Group. It's just like he goes around and kind of just does seminars and talks about negotiating tips and things like that. Just super cool. He's very credible, just so you know. But yeah, so let's get into, before I want to get into the tactics, because he has really cool tactics. First I want to say, like, life is negotiation. Does anyone, like, do you get that?
Yeah.
Do you kind of see what it, like, does anyone have anything to say about it?
I know that one thing that he said is that he's always like kind of practicing or thinking about it, like even when he's in a grocery store.
Yeah.
Like when he goes and talks to the cashier, he says certain things because he never knows if he's gonna have to be negotiating in a
Yes.
couple seconds or something.
Yes.
So
Yeah, and even just like Eddie said, like if you have a boyfriend or girlfriend and you want pizza or sushi, like that's a negotiation. Like from that to a huge business deal, like it's like it's your life. So, and as we said, conflict is a huge part. It'd be silly of us to think like if you're in a relationship that conflict won't arise. Like it's going to, and a lot of times like we're just like surprised by it, but we might not like it, but once we start realizing that's just how it is, that's how the world works, and start taking on like learning this and being like, okay, we can actually, like we can make the outcome happen. You know, like we have a say, and just you're playing the game that human society is set up for. And a huge part of Chris Voss, he's like the game is never manipulation. Like that's not what, it's always about like awareness, trying to understand the other side. Because a lot of times there's like, it's not just the words. You can observe, there's things to take in, and just, he's huge on like what Patch was saying about emotion. Like us humans, we are not rational, like we think we are, but you buy like a $200,000 car, like that's totally irrational, like, but you have your way, you have your values, other things that make sense. So he's huge on emotion. But that's just a preface before we get into some fun tactics, like we can. So the first one is tactical empathy. So basically what you do is you just say, you're like recognizing and labeling what that person is feeling. So an example of this would be, I do cold calling, which is terrible.
Oh.
I hate it.
So-
It's the
Look
worst
at the
thing ever.
growls from everyone's like, oh.
It's so bad. And so we had this script and it was not working. I'm like, hi, I'm Alyssa, going in, it's for Grace Craze. We had, charcuterie board, anyways, so I was going into the whole list of like this, and they're like, who are you? What? And I'm like, I'm so sorry, like that tactic was not working. So we figured out, instead I was like, hi, I'm Alyssa from Grace Craze. I know this call is coming out of the blue. This will only be 15 seconds of your time. Right now I'm at least understanding like, hey, I know this, you're busy. You know, I'm letting them know just so their guard's down and I'm not just coming at them like that. So that's just an example. You're showing how the other person feels before you kind of get into your things. Next, this goes hand in hand with tactical empathy. It's labeling. It seems like you feel frustrated. An example would be, let's say, it seems like you feel blindsided because we made this decision, and it seems that you're frustrated because you were a huge part in helping us, blah, blah, blah. You're letting them know like, hey, I understand you, and it kind of lets them like put their guard down and you kind of like have like an upper hand on it. And I like to say that tactical empathy is the strategy and then labeling is the tool. So you kind of, it seems like to label what they're saying and put a word to their emotion. Okay? And this is the last tactic we'll talk about, is to let people say no. How many times do you guys want to, like a yes in a conversation? Like business-wise, right? You're like, you want them to be no. Chris Voss says, no, don't do that. Because actually when people, like yes almost feels like a commitment. It feels like you're like maybe being tricked. But when people say no, way more comfortable, there's no strings attached. They're more likely to talk to you more likely to be honest. So a way to do that is, has anyone heard of this? What is an example?
I can't think of an immediate
No,
example.
I totally put you on the spot, I'm so sorry.
No, you're
But
good.
give me an example. No, but
Right now.
Yeah.
So I have an example that I
Yes.
give you guys today. If you don't like these assignments, then you gotta come to me and let me know what your concerns are. So does anybody here have any problems with these assignments?
No.
Versus, is everyone excited about doing breakout? Yay!
Yay.
No, it's like, do you guys
Exactly.
have any concerns about why I'm making you do this? No, I think I get it.
Yes.
Yeah, that's precisely where it is.
And one thing I like to add on to that as well, like with the framing of the sentence too, is because I hear a lot about like the yes ladder and stuff like that, where you get it, and I guess that can work, like it has its place and stuff, but I like you shouldn't be afraid to let people say no
Yes,
as well,
exactly.
because I feel like a lot of, especially in sales and stuff like that, where you want someone to just keep saying yes and yes and yes,
Mhm.
like you frame questions so that they say yes. Okay, now what if they say no? Now your
Yeah,
ladder is broken. So yeah, stuff like that.
That's what he's using. He's actually using that tactic of trying to get them to say yes. But yes is a hard commitment, is what she's trying to say. It's much
Right.
easier to get people to say no,
Yeah,
right? Like, is now a good time to talk? they have to
Yes.
say yes.
Right.
Would now be a bad time. Did I catch you at a bad time to talk? Now they have the option to be like, no, it's fine. I can talk now.
Yeah.
Now you're into the conversation.
Yes.
Stuff like that.
And you
Yes.
feel like you're helping someone when you say, no, it's not a bad
No,
time.
no,
Like, you
yeah,
feel
yeah.
Yes,
like
and they're
you're-
like, you're just comfortable. It's not like a,
So
yeah.
when you're mixing this one and the empathetic, like you're supposed to mix them all together.
Exactly.
Okay, next we kind of have an example in an email with all three of the tactics, okay? So we have, hi boss, I understand you've got a lot on your plate right now, and I want to be mindful of that. What is that?
Empathy.
Yes, the tactical empathy. Then it seems like keeping the team focused on key priorities is especially important right now.
Label.
Labeling, and then would it be a bad idea to take a fresh look at the proposal draft before it goes out?
No,
Let them
that's
say
good.
no. Yes, and I actually did this to you, Dr. Pat, just on one of our emails.
Can we get a yes?
Just
Get
for
a yes
just,
in there?
I just said, would it be completely crazy if we, just wanted to add it in there.
Yeah, I mean.
I didn't- yeah.
it's- Yeah, and well, the short answer was, I was gonna be like, yeah, it'd be totally crazy.
I know.
And then she's like, it doesn't work.
Well, no, I mean, part of what you're talking about with the yes ladder, and they even brought it up in the podcast, and I'll urge you guys to listen to it, from that they posted, is we're so used to gimmicks. It's like, you know, what's it gonna take for you to get into this car? And like after a while, you can see through it, like this, get them to say yes 3 times, and then you've got them.
Right.
It's like those solar people that just knock on your door and you want to knock on
Yes.
Oh
Yeah,
It's terrible.
And we're just, and
Get a
especially
real job.
through the internet, social media, we're pummeled with so many gimmicks and tactics, you can see right through them. So instead, what you're trying to do is convert back, we go to even the business model canvas, is what value are you offering this person?
Right.
And are they, I'll have a few things just to add to this, but you guys are doing very well.
This is my, yeah, you can go. The next one is my, this is, I just want to end it off, and you, Tyler, kind of said that. One of his quotes is that the most dangerous negotiation is the one you don't know you're in, which is so real because a lot of times, like, we think like conflict is the scariest part, like, oh, if they say, but no, like the scariest part is like not knowing you're in a negotiation and missing the opportunity to better understand them, connect with people, and just lead to a better outcome. Like, there's just so much more that you can gain rather than being scared of the conflict. So, super cool. He's a
Very
cool
good.
guy. Yeah.
Thank you guys for your time. Thank you for the participation.
Yeah. Thank you.
I hope you take a little bit of something away from this. Like all these things, you could use them today. You could use them right
Just
now.
try it. Yeah.
And
That was really
you and I
cool.
will need to talk about, well, I definitely disagree with a couple of concepts that you have.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
For sure. Well, let me just ask you the question. Is it better to be the first person to make the offer, or should you have the other person make it? Should you make the offer first, or should they make the offer first?
I was told-
The other way,
I
the
saw
was
way
told-
saying
I
that
was
the
told-
first person who speaks loses. Do you agree with that?
No.
That's what I was gonna say. I was told to like put the offer out, and then after you say the number, don't say anything else. Let them
You let
react.
them respond.
Right.
Yeah.
Why
Yeah.
is that? Why, what is
Although
It's
the
an anchor.
anchoring? Very good. So it used to be make them make the offer first. So if you say, so the other thing too, and you've heard some of these concepts, the bluffing is what you're getting into, is the best alternative to a
Yeah, bad
negotiated
weapon.
agreement. It's the ability to walk away. If you can't walk away, you're not negotiating.
Yeah.
You are just hoping to, so that means your car just died, you need to go buy a new car, you don't have the choice to walk away. So recognizing the situation that you're in is part of that too. So, but anchoring is a very powerful consideration, of saying, here's what I recommend, and then people have to change their mind. But you're right, you need to do good research to try to anchor it effectively so you don't get somebody immediately pissed off. You also said nibble is like a hardball tactic. That can actually really be very powerful.
Yeah.
That's called expanding. Another term for that is expanding the pie. I use that all the time, and I'll give you a phrase that you can use now that is so helpful, because you're really just saying we're in agreement in principle. I might be willing to consider that. You're giving 2 back out with just 1 sentence, but it's like when you're buying a car, be like, this car is gonna, we'll give you a trade-in value of $14,000. I might be willing to consider that. Meaning, okay, we're talking about the big thing, but you gotta throw in the snow mats and whatever. It's like, I know we live in Florida, but I wanna make sure. So then you're starting to talk about all the other things that sometimes don't have as much value, but are also helping move things along. Be like, all right, you know what, forget it. Just take the snow mats away and then give me $15,000.
Yeah, I like
And so
that.
these are, some of them are techniques, but it's these ways of expanding the pie. I also, manipulation has such a negative terminology to it, but but it's like, it's not manipulation, it's awareness. No, it is manipulation. I mean, in my opinion, when you're negotiating, you want to get as much value out of this as possible. But how value is defined is in your, maybe we can just kind of end with this, and then we can talk a little bit more about how you put a paper together for it. Is this distributive versus integrative? What's better? Is it, and this is that kind of this notion of win-win versus win-lose. You've heard this in terms of those two concepts? In my opinion, every negotiation is lose-lose. Nobody gets everything that they want all the time. In fact, the best negotiations is if you ever buy a house, everyone kind of feels like they could have done a little bit better, but they kind of got as close to it as what they could. And so that's the starting point. The only time that it's win-lose is distributive, and you get one bite of the apple on that. And that's usually, it's very much transactional. Would you agree with this?
Yeah.
And so this is where, if you are in a transaction with someone and you feel like you get screwed over by them because they won and you lost, you ever gonna do business with them again? Not in a million years. And so we're seeing this in politics right now, and we can talk more about this from a political standpoint, but you know, these you know, I win, you lose kind of considerations. The other thing too is, integration though is relationships, trust, continuing negotiations. And so if you make a negotiation and you win, but then you go back on it, you ever gonna negotiate with that person again either? That's part of these issues too, about, you know, so we see it in politics, certainly. It's kind of the issues that we're dealing with now. I mean, these have been going around even more than the current administration. It happens all the time. But that's part of the issue of hardball tactics are perfectly fine for when you're buying a coffee maker. Because it's like, that's the price. But it's not really as good about saying like, what kind of relationships am I gonna have? Especially like if you're gonna get a job, like someone's like, we're gonna hire you, this is your salary. Is it good to negotiate? Always. Is it something that you wanna be like, if I don't get $80,000 a year, I'm out of here? And they're like, all right, see you later. That's right. But so that's what makes it challenging. But everything is, especially from a business standpoint, recognizing that it's an opportunity to negotiate. Everything is negotiable. I have a couple stories I can share about, like being in Vegas for my 50th birthday. We were at one of those pool decks, and so we were out in the baking sun. It was like $500 to be at this pool deck, and so I'm like, well, what about those cabanas? Like, those are $10,000. I'm like, I said, I'll give you $2,000. They're like, okay. And they're like, my friends were, one was from the FBI. It's like, you can do that? I was like, yeah, it's empty. Yeah. So $2,000 is better than zero.
Yeah, they'll take it all day.
Problem was we had 4 people with us, and so that was our $2,000 buy-in. And we're like, okay, to bring the bottles out. But but the person looked at me. He's in the FBI and in money laundering. He's like, how did you know to ask to negotiate? It's like, because you just do. Yeah, I mean, especially in Vegas, for whatever it's worth. But not that I'm a master negotiator, it's just I'm willing to, well, in my opinion, I'm just saying this because I'm older than you guys are. First of all, be really nice. Really appreciate your time. Make sure you do your research or else you're just guessing. And then ask and follow up and keep on going. And the main thing that works best is it takes practice, and I don't have the embarrassment gene, so I'm willing to push people a little bit further, because meanwhile they're like sweating it out, and I'm like, all right, I always feel like I'm just giving you the best opportunity to put your best foot forward. And this even happened when I was buying a car. I had the Jeep dealer talking to the Honda dealer on their own phones, to each other, negotiating with each other, and I'm like, just trying to give you a chance to be the best foot forward here. Yeah, so it's very workable.
Wait, how did you get them on the phone with each other?
Yeah, well, I was calling him from his desk at the Jeep dealer's desk. This is before cell phones, where it's ubiquitous. So I'm like, can I use your desk to call Honda to see if they can do better? And yeah, so again, it's
awesome.
That's where my wife burst in laughing.
I mean, they do always say that they'll match, like a lot of car companies will match prices.
Sure.
I mean,
Yeah.
I guess until you put them to the test, you don't know.
The Jeep guy's like, I can't do it, so I went to Honda and bought it. Even though I was at Jeep doing it. So I just add that part that you didn't include, is you have to be willing to go through this negotiating slog. And most people aren't, especially most Americans aren't, but some cultures, if you don't negotiate, it's kind of disrespectful.
That's me growing up in Jamaica, like literally everywhere you go, like you have to negotiate.
Is it fun for you? Like, is it kind of not a game, but kind of a cultural process?
Yeah, I feel like it's just natural. Like if you're going to buy say some mangoes on the street and the guy's like $100 for it too, and you're like, hey, I have 100, but I want three of us or something. Like it's like every day. It's like
It's
everyday
the
thing.
culture.
Culture.
Haiti is the same way. Right?
Yeah, like everywhere you go.
Yeah, you can start going down the rabbit hole, like different cultures negotiate differently too. Start chasing
Wish I could
around.
do that at public.
It's just a reality.
$7 for some water.
And I did that too, like when I was buying my car like 2 years ago. I got a code. It was for the Kia K5. I went to the first dealership, got a code. I went to another. They had a newer like the GT line or whatever, and I was like, hey, like this is what I want to pay. So I got like the premium package for the same price.
That's right. You did the work. You did research. You
Yeah.
were willing to go through the negotiation. You were nice about it.
Yeah.
Planning, you got the better deal, remember?
Yeah.
When you plan, you get better results.
Make sure that if you're negotiating, having other people on board too. This is one last story time, Patch. Great job, guys.
Thank you.